The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Today, talking about onshore wind. Manx Utilities Board have endorsed a recommendation to progress Eristane and Scard to the environmental impact assessment and design stage. Based on the initial assessments undertaken by Wardell Armstrong, Manx Utilities say this appears to offer the best value to the electricity consumers of the Isle of Man, with the lowest environmental impact compared to other option sites. Well, today on Manx Radio, Lizzie Riley's here. Lizzie is the Energy Transition Lead and Transition Programme Manager. Paul Evans and Ian Ramsbottom are from the consultants, Wardell Armstrong. So Lizzie, Paul and Ian, hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay, Lizzie, let's just get it first of all. You're the, is it right, Energy Transition Lead and Transition Programme Manager?
Yes, that's correct.
What on earth does that mean?
So Manx Utilities have been set several targets by the Isle of Man government with regards to the decarbonisation of electricity on the Isle of Man. So first target we have is to deliver at least 20 megawatts of onshore renewables by 2026. We have another target which is to deliver 100% decarbonised electricity by 2030. So my responsibility lies with the delivery of projects which are associated with both of those targets, but we're also looking at economic opportunities for the island beyond 2030, and that's as the full net zero transition across various different sectors on the island moves forwards.
Okay, how far down the line is Manx Utilities?
So we've progressed with our onshore wind project, and based on the information we have to date, believe it is deliverable by 2026. We've done a lot of feasibility work on the delivery of a second interconnector, which supports our 2030 target. We're also doing some background work and feasibility studies at the moment with regards to another project, which is to do with having carbon neutral dispatchable generation on the Isle of Man. So dispatchable on demand, you can start it instantly no matter what the weather's doing.
Hold on, industry jargon, what was that?
So we recognise that resources like wind and solar are not 100% guaranteed on any day, and we have a responsibility on the Isle of Man to deliver security of supply. So we have to be able to meet our customers' demand for electricity regardless of what the weather is doing. And to do that, and to be realistic about the transition, you have to have an energy source which you can guarantee is available at any time, irrespective of what the weather is doing. And that's what our customers on the Isle of Man come to expect. Okay,
the second interconnector. I very clearly remember sitting in this very studio 20 years ago when the Jules Verne was down below us, putting that interconnector in that obviously goes to Bispam. At the time, it was the longest AC interconnector in the world. We don't just order these things off the shelf. How long is the lead time and the installation for another interconnector? Will it go along the same path?
So we would try and avoid the same path, because obviously using the exact same route that we have today presents a potential security risk. So there is always the danger that a trawler may end up tangling up with the interconnector with an anchor. So strategically placing them slightly further apart avoids and limits that risk to a certain extent. But we do have an issue in terms of potential power flows. So you don't really want to have two interconnectors that are connecting to two completely different places within the UK, because otherwise you can start to have problems with stability.
Do we know any idea where the second one will go?
I can say it's between the Isle of Man and the northwest of England.
Well, thanks for that. That narrows it down a tad. Let's go to Ian Ramsbottom from Wardell Armstrong. Ian, hi, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
How long have you been with Wardell Armstrong now?
I think it's 17 years this year, in fact, so quite a while now.
Okay, and specifically, what's Wardell Armstrong's directive on the Isle of Man?
So we've been commissioned to undertake the environmental impact assessment surveys as a first pass. So that includes undertaking all of the surveys that are required to feed into that. That's everything from mycology, archaeology. But prior to that, we were asked to look at feasibility of the several different sites and indeed the entire island itself for a wind farm. So Paul and his team have undertaken the feasibility. We've reported that to Manx Utilities, undertaken some public engagement events where we've discussed that. And now it's on to the scoping opinion. So where we are now is we've pulled together all of the issues as we see them that we need to investigate with baseline surveys. We are now sending that to DEFRA so that they can engage with consultees, so they can make sure they have their comments on that, and any technical other aspects that need to be picked up, we can include in our baseline surveys. Okay.
Paul, hi. Good afternoon, Paul.
Hello.
The important thing for the Isle of Man is this is our money. Is it going to work? Is this going to be profitable for Manx Utilities, for us?
Yeah, I mean, in general, onshore wind is accepted to be sort of the cheapest form of new energy generation, bar none. That includes gas, nuclear, obviously hydro, that sort of thing. So in general, it's fair to say that onshore wind is the way to go if you want a cost-effective energy source.
Okay, presumably Wardell Armstrong have been associated with other wind farms here, there, and everywhere. Have you got is there a metric for deciding what's going to work?
Well, there's a whole host of things that need to be looked at to see if a wind farm will be successful. So initially, obviously, the feasibility stage, you need to look at sort of the high-level bit. Is there a wind resource? Which it's fair to say on Ireland, you definitely have an excellent wind resource. It's one of the strongest in the UK, on a par with sort of other islands, so Scottish Islands, Shetland, Orkney, those sorts of places. Once you've established you've got a resource, then you need to look at whether or not you can put the turbines on island without affecting the environment. So initially the feasibility would look at things like designated areas. Do you have areas designated for landscape, designated for ecology? Clearly you'd want to avoid those because they're important from the off. The next biggest thing is quite often noise, which is proximity to dwellings. So do you have any gaps where you could put turbines where they're not going to be right on top of houses in terms of noise impacts? Noise restrictions for wind turbines are incredibly tight. They effectively have to be near silent at dwellings, so it's very restrictive, so you need to make sure you've got space for that. And once you've got those things roughly in place, then you can start doing the detailed studies, which we're sort of looking at now.
Okay. Lizzie, how far away is this? I mean, if with a fair wind, pardon the pun, when could these things be up and spinning?
So our target delivery for commissioning is September of 2026.
2 years this September?
Yes, that's correct.
We are talking about the Isle of Man, not known for its how can I put it, keeping to timetables. So September 2026.
Yes, that's correct. So we are on target at the moment for that delivery, but one of the challenges that is outside of our control is the planning application, and we're due to submit that in January of next year. We're assuming a 12-month window for planning before we can do anything, and it's only if we were to get planning approval that we would then proceed.
Okay, let's go to the lines. And Bonzo, hi, you're live with Lizzie and Paul and Ian from Manx Utilities and Wardell Armstrong. Hi, Bonzo.
Hi, Andy. Yes, and hi, Lizzie and Paul and and other from Ian. Sorry, Wardell Armstrong. It's this virus that's been getting me down, I'm afraid, which is why I haven't phoned in for a couple of weeks because I haven't had a voice to phone in with.
Well, you're welcome back.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So, whilst it still holds out, I'll be quick about it. 4 questions, really. 4 fact-based questions. I'll try not to sound too much like Jeremy Clarkson here on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. But, A, how much will the wind farm cost to construct? B, how much will it cost to run annually? C, how long will it take to pay for itself? And D, how much is it calculated to reduce electricity prices on the Isle of Man by 2030? Would you like to phone a friend?
Yeah, no, I think we'll phone Lizzie first of all. Did you get all those, Lizzie?
Yes, just about, I think. So in terms of how much the wind farm will cost to construct, obviously we are looking at different designs at the moment, and we want to get the best value for our customers on the Isle of Man. So the more design options that we have, the better that value is likely to be. We are shortly going to Tynwald for funding for our wind farm project. We don't expect it would cost more than £36 million. And within that cost, there is a lot of contingency in place to ensure that anything is captured that we don't think about in advance of the project. O&M costs, I'll probably get Paul to come in on this one as well, but if you look to the UK figures from BEIS, which is Business, Energy and Industry Strategy, I think, they had published figures that are on their website, which cover a range of operational and maintenance costs for typical wind farm projects, ranging for all different scales. So somewhere in the range of between £2 and £3 million may be typical if you include insurance, maintenance, operational costs, staffing cost into that as well. Payback at the moment is a tricky one. We're expecting that the wind farm, assuming that the performance is delivering what we expect it to deliver, it could generate up to a third of electricity on the Isle of Man each year. So the figures that are published in our annual reports for how much we spent on gas are in the public domain, and you could look at those figures and offset a third of the money we spent on gas. It's not quite as clear cut as that, because we start to impact the efficiency of the existing assets, and we can't quite run them in the same way. So it's not quite that clear cut. But based on existing annual reports and the information within those reports, payback could be between 2 and 4 years. And I think electricity prices, if we're looking ahead to 2030, it's so uncertain at the moment where gas prices are and where imported electricity costs are, where we would be sitting in 2030. There is a report published on our website already, which is by a company called WSP, and that report suggests that providing we don't have greater than 40 megawatts of renewables on island, that there would be a reduction in price by 2030. But as I say, it's far too uncertain to commit to that at this stage. OK,
and you wanted to throw one to Paul. Which question was it to Paul?
Just to come in on the O&M costs.
What's O&M?
Operations and maintenance.
OK, Paul?
No, that's fine. Yeah, on operation and maintenance, obviously that will be partly dependent on exactly which turbine manufacturer ends up being selected, which will be part of a competitive tendering process. So there is a bit of variability in the range of O&M costs that we're looking at the moment, so we're having to use industry averages to calculate that.
What's the difference between turbines?
Well, different turbine manufacturers have different ways they operate their O&M. So some manufacturers will charge you an amount per unit of electricity generated, for instance, which then incentivises them to make repairs should they break down in some way. Other manufacturers have more of an insurance-backed scheme, which you then pay for sort of over a long period, but it's equal amounts. Others have a sliding scale. So it's very different. Each manufacturer has a different way in which they operate their operations.
And that'll be for Manx Utilities to decide, presumably.
Yeah, so there'll be a tendering process, and then effectively that whatever system works best for Manx Utilities and the island will be the one that's selected.
Because, I mean, there have been all sorts of rumours around the island, Lizzie, that stuff's been ordered already. Has anything been ordered already?
No, I can categorically say we haven't ordered anything with regards to the wind farm at this point in time, other than the environmental impact assessment and survey work that we're doing to date. In order to deliver the project by 2026, we may be required to place a deposit down on wind turbines at some point within the next year, and that is to secure a manufacturing slot. So that doesn't necessarily mean you've already bought and you've already manufactured the turbines. It's just ensuring that you've got that capacity booked in place. We wouldn't be looking to place the full manufacturing order unless we got planning permission.
Bearing in mind that we ordered a sea terminal in Liverpool that was going to cost £36 million. It's now up to £90 million at the moment. I mean, what are the guarantee that these costs aren't going to run away with themselves?
So we are fairly risk averse at Manx Utilities, and the projects we have delivered to date have not significantly overrun that since certainly in the last 10 years across all of our utility services. We have, as I said, built in a lot of contingency factors within that to cover, and we've taken the worst case scenario of the worst case scenario for all of our costings. We've also employed a cost consultant alongside who's verified the costs, and we've got Paul, thankfully, and Paul's experience and backing of how much these projects typically cost within other remote islands in the British Isles. And if you want to have a look at the most recent CFD auction round for onshore wind for remote islands in the UK, and bearing in mind they've got profit margin applied to it, which we don't have a profit margin in any of our costs, they are very comparable with the types of costs we're expecting per kilowatt hour.
Okay, Jeremy, sorry, Bonzo?
Well, so nowhere near the 60 million, I think it was, that Julian was claiming last week or the week before. Lord knows what Eddie seems to think that they will cost. But yes, I mean, when you look at the figures, it is, well, astonishingly for a Manx project value for money.
Okay, all right, thanks, Bonzo, and I hope you continue your recovery.
Thanks.
All right, thanks for calling today. Just to come back to this, Paul Evans from Wardell Armstrong. You say there are various options whereby maintenance and stuff can be factored in. We won't be left to fend for ourselves once these things are up, will we?
No. Like I said, it'll be part of a contract, that'll be made with the turbine manufacturers up front, and that'll be part of a competitive tendering exercise. Quite often now, turbine manufacturers are offering sort of 15, 20, even 25-year warranties on their equipment, right, as part of an O&M agreement. So, we would be looking for a very long-term agreement, and hopefully that would involve, having engineers very close nearby, should anything happen or go wrong.
When you say nearby, would that mean resident on the Isle of Man?
That is the hope, but not guaranteed at this point, but that is the hope.
Okay. So, Lizzie, just to confirm, Eristane and Scard, is that the only contender at the moment? Is it Eristane and Scard or nowhere else?
Certainly for delivery of an onshore wind farm in 2026, it's the only option on the table.
Okay, Julian's with us now. Hi, Julian. You're live with Wardell, Armstrong and Manx Utilities.
Hi, Andy, and hello to your guests.
Hello.
Hello. My ears were burning. I heard my name mentioned with Bonzo.
Right.
I've got a few questions. One is to do with the payback time. I'd just like to know where you're getting your capacity factor of 71% or 130 gigawatt hours, considering that the Shetlands that you have been quoting, the Viking wind farm, on their website, vikingenergy.co.uk, inside the project tab, it's suggesting 46%. And also, of course, the Shetlands are 460 miles north of the island. I'm not quite sure how you're getting the same weather. If you were to go the same distance south, you'd be just south of Paris. So I don't see how our weather can be attributable to a windswept island with almost no trees because of the extreme winds. My second question is, why are members of Wardell Armstrong currently drilling holes into the designated heathland above Eristane, northwards, outside of the curtilage of the Eristane plantation towards the Slot Road, especially without letting the leaseholders of the land inform them beforehand? And also, at the moment, why are several different operations happening at the same time on the site? You've got the SODAR wind measurement sounding device. You've got the drilling going on, which is in some ways cross-interference, and I understand there's bird observations going on as well. And isn't this contrary to your wind farm official good practice noise assessment document, ETSU R97, which states that not only must all relevant parties, including local residents, be engaged with the project from the outset, but also to avoid interference between operations, for example, drilling, ornithological observations?
Okay, who wants to pick that up first?
I'm happy to start.
Okay, Lizzie?
So I think the first question was on the load factor, and I'll let Paul come in on this as well, but it's not really part of our estimated yields at all in the assessment for calculation. So what we do is we look at the wind speeds that are achieved at the site, and we are measuring them. So it's a fact-based approach, and we compare those to the actual performance curves that are from the manufacturers and measured in situ from site. So fairly accurate calculations on the amount that we're producing. I suppose with regards to the weather on the island, we typically have wind from the southwest, and if you look at the Irish Sea and where that wind is channeled from between Ireland and Great Britain, you can see why that site is hit by that wind or that prevailing wind condition significantly all the time, especially where we move to the sort of hurricanes that and storms that move up through the Irish Sea. So yes, weather is comparable, but I think the other thing to mention with load factor broadly, which as I said is not really relevant for our calculations, but it is when you look at the average factors across the UK, you do have older designs to contend with. So the Viking project in Shetland Islands, I think, was commissioned in 2003. So we have much more modern designs now that are more structurally robust and able to operate and perform better in higher winds. But the other aspect that's really significant, especially for UK wind farms, is the amount of curtailment. So for example, if we installed a 100 megawatt wind farm at Erie Stane, and to be clear, Manx Utilities has no plans to do that, we would not be able to see a high capacity factor. We would have to curtail it at least 60% of the time because our demand is just not high enough to accommodate that. And that curtailment means while the wind farm could in theory at times deliver 100 megawatts, it won't be able to because it will have to be switched off or limited. So I'll probably hand over to Paul just to go over the load factor, and then probably pass to Ian to cover the environmental impact assessment at the site.
Paul?
No, definitely. I mean, load factor is not a particularly good measure of performance of a wind turbine generally. Turbines are designed in such a way so that the load factor is sort of dependent on the wind conditions that they're sited in. So it'd be relatively simple to invent a wind turbine that would have a near 100% load factor simply by putting a very large rotor on a very small generator. So overall, it's not really the best measure because ultimately it'll come down to the equipment we select and the conditions that we put it in. Like Lizzie said, it makes a lot more sense to look at the actual wind conditions, which we're up there monitoring, and then comparing those to manufacturer specifications, and then taking into account other things such as turbulence, losses due to interactions between the turbines, that sort of thing, and coming up with a calculated energy yield number.
Okay, Ian Ramsbottom.
Yeah, so to come on to question 2, which is the drilling on the heathland. We're currently drilling on a pathway, and that's one potential access to the site. And as for that, we haven't announced this to the local residents. What we did have to do was delay this till just recently because we needed a licence from the Attorney General to do this work. So we're confident that ourselves and Manx Utilities have done the correct thing there. Now, tenancy agreements will be through, I think it is DEFA and the local tenants, so hopefully they've been informed. But I know that some of our staff spoke with the residents yesterday, so hopefully that's all.
Okay,
Julian?
As far as the load factor or capacity factor, you're using that as a sales pitch to get to say that a third of the island's electrical usage will be covered by the turbines. But you're saying 71%. Shetland, which is way windier than we are, I mean, it's in the top of the North Sea and the North Atlantic. If they're getting 46, and Ørsted's own consortium website is saying the average across the UK, including our latitude, is 26, then I don't see how the payback that Bonzo referred to, how can you get your payback when you're kind of boosting your sales pitch by 4 times more than the reality of what I'm reading? I mean, even if you get to Shetland Islands levels that they've recorded, I know you're talking about older types, but with Ørsted are very up to date. If they're saying 26% on their latest 11,500 fleet of turbines, how are you getting to 71%? Anyway, yes. So that's one thing for you. The other one is, am I to understand Colas was trying to gain access to the privately owned path underneath does that infer that Colas have already been awarded a contract to do all the road building towards the turbines?
Okay, Lizzie?
So to take your last point, we have absolutely no contract with any construction organisation at that point, but I do believe that Colas actually operates the quarry within the plantation itself, so they would have a right of way, but nothing to do with us. And again, just to capture the comments on load factor, the turbines you're talking about with Ørsted, just to take that off, as I said, they are limited by what the output that can be delivered because of demand. So particularly with projects that are commissioning at the moment with National Grid, they are requesting that operators dial back their output. They have constraint payments that are awarded to limit the output of turbines simply because the network will not at all times be able to carry that amount of power. So there's a massive upgrade project going on in particularly the northwest of England at the moment to help transport that amount of power. So if you're an operator, while in theory you might be able to deliver a higher capacity factor, it will be curtailed. So that impacts directly the capacity factor. But to be clear, Manx Utilities figures and our estimates do not take into account the load factor or capacity factor at all. It's based on actual output versus the wind conditions based on performance curves provided by manufacturing. So load factor and capacity factor isn't used at all in any of the calculations. OK,
we've got to leave it there, Julie. We've got lots of people to get to.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. Just a couple of quick questions. Can anybody answer whether or not there's going to be storage for the electricity that's generated? If so, where's it going to be done, Lizzie?
Yeah, so we don't have any plans at the moment to do any storage on the Isle of Man, and it's a technical reason. We don't need to have storage. Typically, when you have storage in the UK or to support renewable projects, it's to dampen to some extent the way they behave and the way they may impact grid frequency. So we have to operate our network within strict limits, and storage can help you avoid those limits. The difference on the Isle of Man, though, is we have an HVAC interconnector between the island and Great Britain. So we are tied to the UK's grid frequency. We can't change that. So the benefits of storage in terms of moderating frequency don't apply to us, which has got a lot of benefits as well, because storage at the moment is still really costly relative to other generation techniques, and we don't need it to maintain stability on our system. In fact, you would only really need it if you took the interconnector out of service, and we typically have operated on this island since it was installed with it out of service for less than 1 to 2% of the time. So really, really good availability on that asset. OK, a quick WhatsApp of 445 John B. Does the £36 million include ground and overhead works required to connect the wind generator to the existing distribution and transmission network? Yes, that's all inclusive and actually includes a portion of the work that Ian and Paul is doing at the moment. So all in cradle to grave costs. Lizzie Riley is the Energy Transition Lead and Transition Programme Manager from Manx Utilities, what we used to call the MEA, and Paul Evans and Ian Ramsbottom from the consultants Wardell Armstrong on Mannin Line till 1 today.
We make oil heating easy with our range of services, whether it's our free smart tank monitoring systems or just our efficient all-island deliveries. Ellen Vannin Fuels has it covered. Call us on 844 000 to find out more.
It's good to talk. It's how we get things done. So when you apply for a personal loan from Black Horse, you'll get support from one of our relationship managers who's there to talk you through your application. You could borrow up to £50,000 with up to 7 years to pay it back, and you could receive your money within 24 hours of approval. Ready to talk? Go to blackhorseoffshore.co.uk to request a call back today. Finance subject to status. Applicants must be 18 or over.
When you save a little money, it means a lot these days.
If you're looking for bathrooms and tiles, you'll always find something new in store at Pacesetter. For surprisingly affordable prices and excellent choice, search online for Pacesetter Douglas. Or better still, visit the Pacesetter Bathroom and Tile Showroom on Harris Terrace and see the new styles in store.
You can get the best of everything, where the price is twice as nice.
Tonight at 6 p.m. here on Manx Radio, join Kiri Kermode and myself, Simon Clark, for Countryside.
We hear from the young farmers as the annual Young Farmers tickets go on sale.
I popped along to the Ramsey and Onken District Fur and Feather Society show and spoke to some of the class winners on the day. And also I got a chat with Keith Carouche, who was the guest speaker at last week's 90th anniversary dinner of the Northern Young Farmers.
That's all in Countryside tonight here on Manx Radio at 6 o'clock. And don't forget, you can download and subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good afternoon. We're live today with Wardell, Armstrong and Manx Utilities. And David, hi, you're live.
Hi, Randy, and to the panel. Good luck, because I'm behind you all the way. Not you personally, but the development of it. People may say because I live in Onken that it's, I'm always going to say that. But these things need to be done for a community that's on the island. And I think one of the pitfalls, you may not disagree with me, and I know that you have to be careful on political statements there. You need to get this ready for an application and get it. And the Council of Ministers need to call it in to an inspector and have it laid out. The inquiry is going to last maybe 2 months, maybe more on that. I see that's going to be the biggest hole that somebody's going to dig for somebody when we have all the people in the Isle of Man have got a view, and we have all these experts that are going to tell us what to do. And at the end of the day, the inspector's going to say, well, what's your professional qualifications, Mr. Quirk? Well, I'm only a plumber. But you two, or three there, are experts. And we rely on experts, whether you like it or not, and we should hold you to account.
OK, Lizzie, are you confident about the planning application?
I don't think anyone could be confident about a planning application at this stage, because we simply haven't finished the environmental impact assessment. But in terms of timescales, we are about to submit a pre-application for that planning shortly, and I'll probably hand over to Ian just shortly. I was just going to capture on the point about the community, in that I think David's absolutely right there. This is a project for the whole of the community, and while it is in one area of the island, it is benefiting the entire island. And Manx Utilities has a statutory obligation within the Electricity Act to deliver the best value to customers and the most economic electricity supply. And irrespective of any climate targets we've been set, we do now have a legal duty within our Electricity Act to deliver a project which produces the lowest cost to customer, and that is onshore wind at the moment.
Ian Ramsbottom.
Yep, so just to give some information on the EIA, we actually hold the IEMA quality mark, and one of the things we must do is ensure that what we provide...
Sorry, EIA is...
Environmental Impact Assessment.
Okay.
Sorry. One of the things we must do is ensure that what we provide is robust and covers every topic we can possibly consider in detail, so that when our environmental impact assessment is handed to the planning department for consideration, that they have all the facts.
Okay. Simply, though, down in the southwest, a lot of people hate this idea, Ian.
Yes, absolutely. We've had several stakeholder engagement things, and we're going to continue those in the summer. We want people to have their opinion. We want them to come to us with their concerns, because if they can be factored in and somehow mitigated in designs, we will do that. And yes, we accept that it's not always the most popular for everybody, but like Lizzie said, this is a nationwide project for the good of the Isle of Man, not just certain individuals.
David?
Don't forget about the East people. There's a lot of people living in the East, and they've positive views. Bye.
Okay, thanks for calling today. We're talking about the obviously the social aspect of it: noise, landscape, visual ecology, energy. There's the airport, water, flood, air quality, and the whole geology of this. You must have a very full in tray, Ian.
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. We have hundreds of people back in our offices working on this. We're drawing on all the expertise we have, including people like Paul. He represents the tip of the iceberg of what we can do. But yes, I have a very full in tray, and I think Paul and Lizzie share that problem at the minute.
And the one point that comes up all the time is the killing of birds.
Yes. So we're undertaking ornithology surveys. Wind farms have a potential to do that, and it's only right and proper that we assess what birds are at that site and where they migrate across the island. We know this is a UNESCO heritage site. and that will be taken into account. But also some of the more modern turbines have features built in where they can be turned off through migratory bird seasons and things like this, whether there's a couple of weeks. And part of our ornithology surveys are to pick up when that is happening so that we can ensure minimal impact. Paul, do you want to add to anything on that?
Yeah, one thing I can add to that, I mean, we'll be doing detailed collision risk assessments as well, so there are methodologies out there which effectively look at the swept area of the turbines, what species are around, and then each species effectively is given a risk factor, what's its ability to avoid turbine blades, and then from that we can make a prediction of what likely bird strikes might be, if any, and then look at mitigation options, which can involve all sorts of things from moving turbines through to changing the way you operate them. So yeah, there's a number of different things you can look at.
I mean, what's being proposed now, the wind farm at Eriestrain and Scard, is the biggest interruption to our natural life since we had mines here in the middle of the 19th century. 40% of the lead in the UK and the British Isles was mined on the Isle of Man. The mines came and the mines went, and we haven't had anything really on the Isle of Man that has disturbed the equilibrium since this. So lots of people are very concerned about it not going wrong.
No, I fully appreciate that, and that's why there's so much work going in up front, to make sure that, as far as possible, everything that could be an issue is considered. But, I mean, I appreciate it is a change, and any change is difficult. And it's, part of the job is to make that process as easy as possible and to answer as many queries and questions as possible.
OK, here's a quick one from Colin for Lizzie, and just saying, one question really, will the construction of the turbines, will it all be at a fixed price contract or will it be subject to variation, Lizzie?
So I think that's really a question for when we actually get to the tender process, and there's a lot of unknowns at the moment that I'm not able to provide an answer. So the construction and the team that you appoint is somewhat dependent on which manufacturer that ends up winning the manufacturing contract, and each EPC contractor will have different requirements and their own, but we would look to mitigate risk as far as possible, and as I say.
Whose call is that? Is that MUA or is it Comin, the government, Treasury?
Treasury to some extent would advise on what they or how they would like us to manage the financial risk, and we would need to get Treasury approval before we proceed with anything, before it goes wider and goes forward to Council of Ministers and Tynwald as well. OK.
Hi, Kiri, you're live talking about the wind turbines.
Hi, everyone. My first question, Lizzie was saying that your project is on track. You had a roadmap published on the MUA website, which quotes that in January 24 there will be a design freeze, i.e. that the initial design is complete with turbine locations fixed. When will you be releasing that information to the public?
Okay, thanks for your question. Yes, that roadmap is still on our website. And I believe there's another one going on as well for the environmental impact assessment as well, just to highlight what process we're going to as well. So we have reached a design freeze, but that isn't necessarily fixed turbine locations, because we at the moment have a number of different manufacturing options we're considering, and they would each have different turbine placements depending on it. We are shortly going to be submitting our scoping report, and we understand from the planning department that will be pushed into the public domain imminently. So.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
So, right, my second question, if you don't mind. So I understand you have been issued a drilling licence for Kringle Great Park to drill boreholes up to 15 metres deep, and this is an area of registered heathland. If we go back to your operational decision-making document, which is produced by Manx Utilities, there is a statement in there: the consultants advise that heathland should be avoided at all costs. So I just wondered if you could clarify why you have moved outside the original site constraints onto registered heathland?
Okay, let's go to Ian for that. Ian?
Yeah, so the first thing to say is that what we are looking to target with that drilling operation is the ground conditions of the footpath that is there. So we've taken careful steps so that our drilling contractor and our engineers on site don't run roughshod over heathland, is the first thing to say. The reason it's outside of the Eristane plantation is because this is one potential access route into the wind farm itself.
Okay, Lizzie, Kiri?
Okay, so you are prepared to put an access road on registered heathland?
Again, we're trying to target the existing footpath. What we need to do is look at all of the options, and that is the point of what we're doing right now. There are multiple options for access. This is just one of them. Naturally, we're not going to just go and dig up all of the potential options now. We want to do a targeted drilling regime which sets out which is the best possible route. We do want to protect as much heathland as possible, and I know MUA share that view.
Okay, just out of interest, how wide and how deep are typically roads that have to service wind farms?
It does vary depending on the transport requirements of the individual turbine manufacturers and their transport partners. Anything up to 4 to 5 metres is pretty standard. Depth of it can vary very, very dramatically depending on the turbine itself and the components and the weights, etc. Paul, did you have anything to add on that, Moz?
No, can do, yeah. So depths are normally in the region of 10 to 20 centimetres, so it's a geotextile membrane and then hardcore normally, but that does assume sort of fairly stable ground conditions. Obviously, until you know exactly what's in the ground, hence the drilling that's taking place at the moment, it's hard to understand, exactly what will be required, but that would be standard.
Okay, all right, Kerry. Anything else, Kerry?
No, I'm sure we'll have that covered when we see the scoping document, which I presume is due imminently as well.
Okay, just one question also to Lizzie, Paul and Ian, who's best to answer this? How on earth are they going to get the blades to Eristane? Will they come in pieces or will they be brought up as one? Paul?
So they will come in one piece.
How big are they?
So they will be, I say it partly depends on the turbines we're looking at ultimately. So we would expect them to be around sort of 65 metres, that sort of ballpark.
The best part of 200 feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely they're big items.
Do we know where they're going to come ashore?
So there's a couple of options at the moment. One is by the port, just we can see out the window here at Douglas. The other option is potentially a beach landing at Castletown Beach. That's still in fairly early stages of assessment, trying to determine what would be the best route. However, the Port of Douglas is preferred.
Okay, we're live with Wardell, Armstrong and Manx Utilities talking about onshore wind. If you have anything to answer or anything to ask, by all means get in touch. Text, email, call and WhatsApp.
The Nation Station celebrating 60 years. This is Manx Radio.
At HSBC, we're here and here. So you can go here or just chill in your own space here. We're here for all your banking needs. Pop into your local branch or book an appointment online. HSBC, opening up a world of opportunity. HSBC Bank PLC Isle of Man branch is regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority. Visit the HSBC website for terms and eligibility requirements.
It's B&B Furniture's winter sale. With fantastic bed and bedroom savings in our newly extended bed department, plus free bedding packs and extra gifts available with selected purchases. There's 0% finance too. Ends this weekend.
Have you been invited to take part in the Household Income and Expenditure Survey? It's one of the most important surveys for our island because the information you provide is vital data for our island's financial planning. It helps us calculate our VAT revenue from the UK. Plus, it gives us a better understanding of the financial strains on residents, so we can support those who are struggling. If you've been invited, please take part. Visit gov.im www.manxutilities.co.uk/HIES for more information.
Caroline North is back this weekend with a selection of your greatest music from the 60s to the 90s. We got some money to give away with our competition to spend in the Caroline web shop and the return of Nigel Harris for this February. Join us live from the Ross Revenge along with Manx Radio here at Caroline North.
Radio Caroline North, back on 648 and 1368 AM. The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Talking to Lizzie Riley from Manx Utilities, Paul Evans and Ian Ramsbottom here from the consultants, Wardell, Armstrong. Lizzie, one of the things in the middle of all this, and I say in the middle of all this, ordinary people, constituents, voters, taxpayers don't have the expert knowledge that you and your colleagues have. How on earth do we sort out misinformation, propaganda, people pitching for work? How does the public cope with this?
I think it's really difficult because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and there are a lot of people certainly that have contacted us that have been worried about things that are not necessarily based in fact at the moment. Typically, there's already a lot of information on our website, and that information has come from factual sources. We're not publishing anything that we don't agree with.
ManxUtilities.im, by the way, that is.
Yes, thank you very much. And we do have experts advising us on every stage of this journey. We wouldn't be going ahead if we didn't have that expert knowledge feeding into our process.
Okay, and Wardell-Armstrong.com is the consultants who are we're talking to today, to Ian and Paul. Eddie, you're live with the onshore wind people. Hi, Eddie.
How are you doing? All right.
Good. Thanks.
First of all, I agree with most of the points that's been made by Julian and most of the others. And we're getting name drops again. But first of all, I'd like you to know that regardless of what you do, the people of this area have done an awful lot of homework, and we actually just base things on facts. And we are going to fight this to the very end, using the precedents from France and so on. It's going to be, if it goes wrong for you, it's going to be an absolutely massive cost.
How far would you be? You live close to where the wind turbines would be, Eddie, is that right? How far away?
Just over 500
metres.
Yeah.
Okay. So they will be close by. And what is it that concerns you the most, Eddie?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, you've had a few comments today about birds and things. I've got a little thing here. Perhaps, can I ask all of your panel there? Have they ever heard of Billings?
Yeah, it's all right. Just go ask us the question if you would.
Well, the question is, have they read that Billings, which is a massive subsidiary of the biggest provider of nuclear renewable energy, have just been ordered to pay £8 million in fines. And it's not the first time neither. These companies seem to break the law wherever they go. But that's just one fact, not fiction, it's fact. One fine of £8 million. My point I was going to get, my first point is this. The area in which you're going to do all this, we are going to fight. And if you sort of put into your costs at the worst case scenario, your own words, what it would cost if you had to take the damn things back down again. That's my first question. I've got two, so see what the panel says for that one.
Okay, Lizzie? Any contingency for dismantling if they get put up?
We haven't included contingency for dismantling early if they're put up. Reasons for dismantling early would tend to be an error, a manufacturing error, and that's usually covered under warranty period. There isn't precedent in Manx planning rules that I'm aware of that requires anyone to take it down once it's already got planning approval. But I am pleased to hear that it is really good to hear from residents in that local area what their concerns are, because whether you agree with the wind farm development or not, this at this point in time is the opportunity to feed into the process. And regardless, as I say, if you want the development to go ahead or not, we still have the ability at this point to modify the design and can at least mitigate some of the impact on local residents as much as possible. So we have the opportunity to do that.
Okay, Paul Evans, do these things ever get taken down?
No, again, it was very unusual for a wind farm to be taken down before the end of its life. In fact, quite a lot of the work we do at the moment is life extensions and repowers, so wind farms that have got to the end of their working life. So then the developers are going back to planning to either extend their life or to get new turbines installed on the same site.
And typically, how long is a wind turbine's life?
So the early ones were designed around a 25-year life. However, what we're seeing now with more recent designs, which is primarily due to the sort of increased robustness that's come about due to offshore wind turbines being developed, they're now looking at around sort of 35 years as a typical design life.
Eddie?
Well, that slightly avoided what I was trying to say there. The fact is that on health grounds and bird kill, they were ordered to take the things down. Go on to the second question. You've not got a lot of time left. Has your panel considered the similarity to places like Orkney, where the turbines that they put up there, the bases, have caused landslips and flooding, and again, an absolute disaster?
Are you aware of that, Paul?
I'm aware of a number of projects, particularly in Scotland on peatland, where there has been issues during construction with peat slide. And one of the things we are looking at as part of our assessments, and in fact one of the things that's being looked at with the drill that's up there at the moment is there peat present and would it likely cause a problem?
Okay, Eddie, we've got a dash, but I appreciate it, and it's not going to be the last time we'll talk about this. Thanks for calling today. I just want to get on to one question, Lizzie, and this is from WhatsApp at 969. With regards to noise impact, what's the minimum distance you can build the turbines from residential properties?
So again, Paul probably will come on this as well, but it's not a minimum distance. The minimum distance that we've been looking at and quoting to when we were doing the feasibility studies is when you're trying to do a core screening process. So you typically look to stop at 500 metres when you're doing that core screening process. But the actual relevant point is we are trying to avoid the background noise level or the noise level of an adjacent property increasing beyond 35 decibel average once the wind farm is installed.
Paul?
No, that's right. So it's entirely a factor of the wind speed and the current background noise in an area. So the noise limits are 35 decibels or 5 decibels over the existing background, and that dictates the distance. So I've worked on projects where the background is very low, and you might see sort of 500-600 metres. I've also worked on projects which are next to motorways and main roads in the UK, where you've got turbines within sort of 200 metres of a property.
You're looking to get in touch with people throughout the summer, aren't you, Ian?
Yeah, very much so. So we want to work with MUA and their team to hold stakeholder engagements. We don't have dates set yet, but we're working with them to come up with those. We're going to do a range of them at nights and at weekends so that everybody who's working, as well as those who aren't, can come and talk to us about the potential designs, air the queries and questions that they might have, like they have on this radio show. We're committed to doing that with MUA.
Okay, well, with that in mind, I hope there's an open invitation. Lizzie, will you come back in the near future and talk more about this?
I'll have to clear it with Manx Utilities, but I'm certainly happy to.
Manx Utilities, I'm sure. Alison, get onto it straight away. All right, thanks for being with us today. To Lizzie Riley, the Energy Transition Lead and Transition Programme Manager from Manx Utilities, and Paul Evans and Ian Ramsbottom from Wardell Armstrong. Back tomorrow, open line.
WINT.